Do a motion.
Just to move to open the public hearing, call to order them. And then the motion is number 3. Yeah, it's on my computer. Like last time, yep.
Okay, well then let's call this meeting to order 5:30. And Travis, we have the verification of the posting. I move to open the public hearing for the draft chapter 37 of the Shoreline Wetland Floodplain Zoning.
You need a second?
No, I guess I do.
I'll do it.
Listening. Carmen, was that an aye from you?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm having trouble hearing you. You're
We just had a motion to open the public hearing. So in favor of that?
Aye, yes.
Okay. And abstain? No. Okay, motion passes. The public hearing on draft chapter 37, Shoreline Wetland Floodplain Zoning is open.
Do it like 3 minutes or something.
Yeah, I think the same as we did last time.
Nothing, no, I didn't get any, no emails or written communication of anyone, so nothing on my end.
As you can see, they're packing them in here.
So listen to each of them.
Pardon me?
We get to listen to each of them.
Yeah.
It's no chairs.
Close it.
Now we gotta keep it open.
How long?
I think we did it, but
15 minutes last time.
We have to sit here for 15 minutes.
Yeah, and then the 6 o'clock is
Then we
the,
have a meeting at 5:30. There's no point in closing anything early. 'Cause we got this meeting.
So can we start our meeting at the same time?
No, we can't start before the posted time at 5:30.
6 o'clock.
It is
6
5:30.
o'clock, I'm sorry, 6 o'clock. See, this has just been my day. You know what this big stack of paper is? I just wanted to print the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting. And this single-sided. It's time for.
I did
Two
mine
pages.
double-sided and two-sided, two-pages.
Then it's
Oh,
too
I
small.
I couldn't have read that. No, it's, you know, and I know the one that I actually wanted is buried in here somewhere. And then, oh, great, I'll say, oh, where it did do double-sided, it's a few other side. It's been one of those things. At least I got the comprehensive appropriation. Could use a schedule for that.
So we have to wait till 6.
Yeah,
So there's a restroom that way, right?
yeah, right around the corner.
Got a little bit. The recipe for Irish soda, they grab too much up, like.
Is there any way we can be efficient in use of the time, like we can discuss what we're going to discuss, so that when we get to it, it's good?
Sure, we're not supposed to discuss it until we actually get to the meeting, because the meeting.
Right, I understand that. I
Yeah.
mean, just to say, here's what we're going to do, and we'll cover this, you might want to look at it between now and then. So,
Now, if you haven't had an opportunity to read the short-term rental,
I have,
I would be reading that, because I haven't had a chance to go through it all. So. Well, I was looking at other community ones. Working, so I did. Yeah, I have to read it on my little phone, but it's like, that's not gonna happen.
that's why I printed it.
Well, I was out of the country. You know. Travis, you don't stapler in your little box, do you?
No.
Travis, did you see the chat text from Commissioner Gasparo?
No.
People at table audio is muffled. I can hear Jeff and Travis clearly. So the audio from the table is a bit muffled.
Are you plugged in?
Yeah, it's plugged in.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, for the most part, definitely I can hear you well. I think as it gravitates a little bit towards President McCulloch, it gets a little bit less clear.
No, because it's over.
I think it's the room, not the speaker, by the way.
I just put the volume thing up. Does that make a difference?
Sounds better, at least on my end.
Sounds a
Carmen?
little better. Sounds a little better. Thank you.
Just hit the plus.
Yes.
Hopefully that works.
So how high in the thermometer did the mercury go today?
Maybe more. It's 47 right now.
Well, in Carlsbad, California, it went up to 65 degrees, so. Bright sun, cool breeze off the ocean.
Where is that in California?
Carlsbad,
Very nice.
Yeah.
I lived in Los Angeles for about 6 years. We hit 52 in Appleton today.
looks like it's a mild trend. It's southeastern Wisconsin.
Haven't included whether or not there's anybody doing short-term rentals in 20.
I haven't gotten anything from the county.
I'm sorry,
I haven't gotten any information from the county on that. They're supposed to update us on that when they would find those.
Is the short-term rentals, is that mostly from the state that we, or is it much we can adjust to it or not really?
Yeah, this is a draft ordinance, so I think there's something that,
'Cause I know some of them we weren't allowed, they were pretty.
that's what,
Yes, like the floodplain, not much we can do.
yeah, I'm sure we'll dive into that more once we get to that part.
we probably should close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
What's the public hearing?
I'll second it.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the public hearing for the shoreline wetland floodplain zoning is now closed at 5:54. So, this would be a good time to have to use the bathroom or anything before the meeting starts.
Minutes. So we're gonna have an overwhelming response for this part too.
Must be doing something right. Okay, call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Do the roll call. I'm here. James Aaron's.
Here.
Colette Bernadette. Here. Carmen Gasparo. He's muted.
You're here, Carmen.
I know you're here.
Marvin, I'm here.
Okay, Karen Jansen.
I'm here.
Rosa Stone is not, and Jim Walker. Here. Okay, at this time, individuals can speak on any topic on the agenda for up to 3 minutes. Time extensions are at the discretion of the committee chair. No action can be taken on items not listed except as a possible referral to committee staff or future agenda item. Do we have anybody in the room? Do we have anybody online that would like to speak? Oh. Okay, the meeting minutes from the January 23rd meeting. They're buried in this. Yes, here. Do I have a motion to approve them? I'll have a chance to look at them.
I read, them, but I wasn't here.
Okay, then I could probably not vote. I just have, is this Point Road or is this?
This is Lighthouse Drive.
Or I mean Lighthouse Road or Lighthouse Drive?
Lighthouse Drive.
Okay, they say Lighthouse Road. That's on this one, but.
The road's probably the
but,
new one, right?
It's all.
I just noticed it on this one, on the minutes, like, it doesn't say.
No.
Let's see.
Oh, I see what you're looking at.
I
It's
just
always-
noticed it
it's all
on the
Lighthouse
top.
Drive.
It's
It's always been Lighthouse
Yeah,
Drive.
I just noticed that. Probably because it's, you know, I know sometimes they interchange the address, anyways.
Technically, this is Village Hall Drive.
Really?
Lighthouse Drive is at least according to the maps.
Okay.
Lighthouse Drive is the
Sure,
main
that would
road,
be the main road.
and this is Village Hall Drive.
Okay, let's not really confuse people. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
I forgot to bring my list, but I did read them.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I,
Look, you weren't here, so you probably don't have a vote. What? You said you weren't here?
I was absent, it's right on the minutes.
Yeah, so you probably didn't. Okay, Carmen, you there?
Yes,
So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then abstain, we'll put you as an abstain. So it's 5-0-1. Okay, let's move on. Discussion and recommendation to village board regarding draft 37 shoreline to wetland floodplain zoning. It's a mouthful. Okay. So is this where we just recommend it as is? Good, there's nothing we can do.
No.
So do we-
Well, there was one discussion item that we had at the last plan commission meeting, and that was potential conditional uses for certain structures within the shoreline zone.
okay,
I
that's
sent an
probably-
email to Travis that I think I may have referred to the transitory accessory structures in the zoning ordinance as a potential, I don't know, allowance for a conditional use within the shoreline zone. Is that something the plan commission is inclined towards considering tonight, or is that something we should just leave for a future discussion after we adopt?
Fresh my memory a little bit more. Do you have a page that we will look at?
There was a Wednesday, January 29 email.
Right, so transitory accessory structures, the best way to describe them is they're things that you put on the ground, but they're not really affixed to the ground. A couple people could pick them up and move them. The examples in the zoning ordinance, I'll just read it quickly, is a transitory accessory structure. An accessory structure in a residential district, including the following: enclosed structures no larger than 120 square feet in area, basically garden sheds. Pergolas, not including decks, trellises, fences and walls, children's playhouses, play apparatus, swing sets, sandboxes, and the like. Raised bed gardens, beehives, enclosures for chickens, dog enclosures, swimming or wading pools with a maximum wall height of 24 inches that may be readily disassembled for storage, and other structures deemed to be substantially the same by the Plan Commission. So that's something that if the Plan Commission is so inclined, and I want to stress I'm not recommending it, but if the Plan Commission was so inclined to allow those kinds of things within that setback from the shoreline zone, you could do so as a conditional use. The main hurdle there is a conditional use is a rather ponderous process, right? It costs $300 plus to submit an application. A public hearing is required. You have to go through the public hearing. Plan Commission has to make a recommendation to the village board, and village board has to adopt it before a permit's issued. So I'm not sure anybody who'd want to put a swing set within 75 feet of the ordinary high water mark is going to spend that effort and that amount of money to do it. So if you're asking for a recommendation, my recommendation would be to just not allow structures within the shoreline zone. But if you're so inclined, these are some of the structures that would be the easiest to allow. Anything more substantive than that does get a bit complicated because WDNR is very, very strict in what they'll allow within that 75-foot area. And really, with the exception of things like boathouses and portions of docks and piers, there's not a lot that they'll allow.
Well, I can tell you in real life, do you think anybody's gonna ask for a permit to put a swing set?
Well, it's only
Or
75 feet.
sandbox,
Is it only
Sandbox.
75 feet from the shoreline?
From the ordinary high water mark, that's correct. So that would be
Oh,
the,
the ordinance is
no.
100. The
Wait.
ordinance-
Is it only from the shoreline or what are you saying exactly?
so chapter 37 applies to the shoreline zone, and there's different categories of that. But in this case, it would be 75 feet from the ordinary high water mark of a water of the United States. So that'd be Lake Michigan, it'd be potentially wetlands. This is not the 100-foot setback that's in the zoning ordinance for shore yards. That's related, but not the same. This is DNR established 75-foot setback. And DNR allows, some of the things that they do allow is all manner of vegetation, but they're generally very restrictive on anything that would be invasive. So you can't plant purple loosestrife. You can't plant Norway maple. You can't plant anything that is a potential problem from an ecological standpoint. What you can do though is, again, simple stuff. You can have a path, a stone path down to the lake. You can have steps that take you from the shoreline down to the beach. Those kinds of things are typically allowable. The village could prevent those or prohibit those. I'm not sure that you want to. In most cases, municipalities just leave it alone and they choose to do something called prosecutorial discretion. If somebody puts a swing set where they're not supposed to put a swing set and nobody cares about it, nobody argues, nobody says anything. If a neighbor says, hey, you can't have a swing set there, then the village administrator or the zoning administrator or the village attorney would, essentially effectively knock on the door and say you have to move your swing set. So that's the way most municipalities deal with it. It's just that there were conditional uses listed in the previous version of the zoning ordinance with the shoreline section. And I think the question was, what kind of structures do I think would be potentially allowable? So that's why I gave you this email.
To me, it sounds like we shouldn't add it. Cause it's only affecting a small part of the,
Right, I mean,
just the,
Right,
the
and
shoreline
then-
only and 75
Well,
feet
and
and,
then even like Meadow Lake and stuff, and there's nothing over there, there's nowhere to put anything
no,
that they would allow. I mean,
and if it's something bigger than that, it's not allowed by the DNR anyways, so that would be removed. And planes, then we can deal with it.
So we just let it be,
Let it be in,
and if somebody does something that's objectionable, then we deal with it.
correct, which is what Jeff was recommending. I agree with that,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
because this shouldn't happen very often. I mean, that's,
no, I mean, the only thing I can think of where, right now where it could be an issue is like in Wind Meadows where the leisure center is, they've got a grass area right by the lake.
are you talking
Inside-
Lake Michigan or just some of the inland ponds kind of thing?
Yeah, good question. So it applies to waters of the United States. So if certainly Lake Michigan would apply, any natural lakes, any natural ponds, all streams, creeks, rivers. If it's an artificial pond, sometimes it applies, but generally only if that artificial pond crosses over to be a designated or delineated wetland. It does apply to emergent wetlands, meaning wetlands that have standing water for significant periods of the time. It generally does not apply to conventional wetlands, cattails, where if you step in it, you get really muddy, but you can't swim through them. So that's all.
And
That's
metal
all.
ones are man-made.
Yes.
But I
What is
wonder,
water?
I don't know if that actually has, I don't know if it's got actual lake, river water going through it.
Those
I
are
don't know.
those are man-made. Those are like, when you build a subdivision, you have to have the retention ponds or
Right. This does not apply. The
Okay, well,
chapter
then that's the only situation.
those are
I could
retention
thought
ponds.
that
So
it might
we have the
apply.
stream that goes through the, what do you call it, property,
Wing spread.
wing spread. I doubt they have any swing sets.
No, well, I mean, it could be
They're gonna
something,
put a
that's
sandbox
the
in
only
there.
thing I was thinking of.
No, but those
You
are
know,
man-made,
that-
and it would be, I guess, if somebody had a condo on one of those ponds and somebody complained about structure.
So just
Deal.
to be clear, just to be clear, stormwater systems, retention ponds, detention ponds do not fall under the authority of chapter 37 or NR 115. Those are completely separate. They don't apply. They're not waters of the United States.
Okay,
Those are
so that's
retention ponds.
easier.
So it's really, for us, it's Lake Michigan and the stream that runs through.
Exactly.
Valley Trail over
Wing spread.
there.
Yeah, well, that goes all the way
Yeah,
from
exactly.
over here through Wing spread up the Valley Trail. But I mean, most of that's in a ravine, which is not, there's no, so I would say we leave it alone and if somebody complains and then, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have a tendency to agree with that.
Thank you, Jeff.
So can we
You're welcome.
approve and release, so we don't have to talk about the, what do you call it anymore? Flood plan, is it done?
Well, yeah, it's.
If we approve it, is it officially done then?
I think it's.
The plan commission, it's an ordinance, so it has to be adopted by the village board. So the plan
Okay.
commission.
Your work's done.
But it would be done here though, right?
Yes, sir. Unless it comes back.
Unless somebody sends it back.
Somebody says, hey, I want to put my swimming pool next to the lake. The
We
water's
gotta
clean.
have that swing pool looking over the lake, right?
There you go. The endless pool right on the shore of Lake Michigan.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
So what is it, a motion to recommend to the,
Village board.
okay, I'll make a recommendation to to present the shoreline wetland floodplain zone to the village board.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Uh,
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes. We'll be sending that on to the village board.
How many minutes? 45 minutes, we got one thing done.
Well, actually, that was only 15.
Well, we've been here 45.
We gotta do the hearing. Discussion and recommendation to the village board regarding the village of Wind Point comprehensive plan. So
That's,
this is where we were looking at, the fee structure, what we were gonna have done. Because we pretty much have one in place, and so it's for any additions and to, do our own, so we don't,
that's great, Tony.
the county would do whatever they want.
So
That,
the,
that makes us compliant,
That was this,
yes.
so the table that appears on pages 6 and 7 is the revised budget. With one qualifier, and that is at the tail end or the bottom of page 7, you'll see the note regarding the village of Sturtevant. So the village of Sturtevant has decided to move forward. Their village board approved moving forward with the update of their comp plan. And what I said to both communities is if the two communities do it concurrently, there'd be a reduction in the cost because of the economies of scale that I would have basically doing the research. There's another opportunity, and I think this warrants some discussion this evening. And I think Travis has spoken with Amanda Gain, the administrator for the village of Sturtevant, to potentially combine some of the meetings, which would then reduce the cost. And again, these aren't thousands of dollars of reductions, they're hundreds of dollars, but they're your hundreds of dollars. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to save them or not. So immediately, if the village of Wind Point decides to move forward, the cost will be reduced by $564. If the villages decide to combine the engagement session, that first kickoff meeting, that would reduce much of the cost because I wouldn't be going to two different meetings. So each community would be basically, the cost of the meeting would be halved for each community, if that makes sense. So if you look at the kickoff session is $470, so that would be, roughly $235. So there are a number of little things like that throughout the planning process when it comes to meetings. The initial meeting at 188, again, if we did an initial meeting on Zoom where I hosted the meeting and it was the Village of Sturtevant Plan Commission and the Village of Wind Point Plan Commission, and it would drop that by half too. So again, at some points it's penny and pound, right? Saving a little bit here doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I don't want to make it more complicated just so you can save $94. So it's up to you to make that decision though, but I think there is merit to the kickoff session being combined. I think Sturtevant would be, and I can't speak for them unless Travis has spoken with Administrator Gain, but I think if the location is at Wingspread, or if it's in a location in Sturtevant, I suspect the communities would be okay with that, but maybe not. Maybe your residents would say, hold it now. We don't want to drive to Sturtevant to go to our meeting. And Sturtevant may say the same thing. So those are the complicating factors. None of that has to be decided tonight. If both communities decide to give it a go and it looks like it'll work and we move forward, great. If you put feelers out to the community and it looks like, no, we want to do it here and they can do it there. Again, we don't have to make that decision tonight. There is really no decision in terms of the budget other than if Wind Point does agree to move forward, again, the cost is reduced by $564.
Jeff, so I just want to clarify on the kickoff meeting, that is not just a meeting with the two plan commissions. That is a meeting with the two communities.
That's
with
correct.
Residents involved.
That is
Okay. Because if it was just the plan commissions, I'd say, yeah, let's do it,
absolutely.
I personally, I know how possessive people are about their communities. And I don't know what the kickoff meeting entails, if it's generic information that both can benefit from. But they're very different communities. And I personally, my opinion here, this is strictly my opinion, I think it'd be better to do separate meetings.
I was thinking the same in terms of the time it takes. Because this includes the, to your point, the general public, right?
Right.
And the questions that might come from there, depending on how many they have. People generally, if you group them as people, they are bound to be a lot of issues than just a smaller group.
We have
They're
some-
very different communities too.
They're very different.
This is more residential,
Some
there's a lot more
similarities, but,
manufacturing and.
well, not only that, but
Japanese.
they have room within their own community to expand, whereas we don't. That's a huge thing. So they have a lot more commercial development, expanding their tax base, that type of growth, whereas we don't have that.
So we
So-
might, on our side, we might have a lot of idle time because of those issues arising from those, and we don't have those issues here.
I also think that people are not gonna want to drive out there for our little community, a bigger community, they would want to come here.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
we
I
save
just-
some
I
money
get
by
it.
doing it at the same time, would be just to save more if we combined a couple extra meetings,
So
is
how
that my
much
understanding?
is the cost here?
That's correct.
So it seems like the big savings is doing it at the same time as we approve it, we just won't do the meetings together and won't save the second thing.
I think we should take advantage of the data.
Yeah,
part.
That's what I'm saying,
I like the $900.
and the other is
I
like,
think we need to do the meeting separately,
I agree.
I agree too.
and I'm feeling the board would agree to.
I,
I don't know that we need to actually vote on that. We can recommend that. They can, the board can make that decision, but
Is that our
that's
job
our
to recommend?
recommendation. My
You have to approve
recommendation.
this, yeah, the comprehensive plan, so I just.
Do you want us to approve the plan, but recommend not doing combined meetings?
So so there's been no formal recommendation to combine the meetings. It's just been a staff level discussion with the village administrators. So there would be no need for the planning commission to take any action other than to recommend moving forward if you're so inclined. Because again, the cost savings comes through no action other than moving forward. So,
Have you spoken to Amanda? What did they say?
Well, I haven't said anything because we haven't approved this.
I was just,
so-
I was, because of conversation, I was just curious if they thought that was,
So I'm waiting until I can say, yeah, we're doing it, or no, we're not gonna do it.
oh, okay, no problem.
So,
I'm all for combining the data, because if you're pulling it all together and we're doing that, I'm all for saving the money there, but
yeah, because they already approved it, so they're waiting for us.
you know,
oh, okay.
that part I agree on. As far as meetings,
So what do we have to do to approve it? Just,
Recommend it to the board.
I make a motion to recommend it to the board?
I'll second that.
no, I guess I should be writing this down. Where'd paper go? This is. I apologize, this is, right there, on the top. All right. So that was Jim?
Yep.
And Carmen?
Yes,
Guys are a team, all in favor of recommending the one-point comprehensive plan to the board, say aye.
Aye.
aye,
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, motion passes. Let's move on to
Short term,
discussion and recommendation on short-term rental ordinances. Okay, so I see we have one that you've written, and I see all the ones that were included in our packet from different communities. A lot of detail. There's some on, when you go looking at them, some are very simple and some are very, very detailed. And I noticed they've had to get more detail. I'll leave this one to you, Jeff.
So the background is, as when we left the last meeting, I was collecting or compiling examples to, well, basically to give you something to consider. I pretty quickly, given the nature of given the context of the discussion at the last plan commission meeting and the level of detail I felt that seemed to me that the Village of Wind Point would want out of this. I looked at the ordinances I've written and I didn't think any of them rose to that level of detail. So I instead looked at others, and as President McCullough just pointed out, there are some extensive ones out there that have more fluff than substance, but they do go to 20 pages long. There are a lot of them that are a page and a half. So it was really a question of trying to look at as many as possible and find one that I could say, this would be the best one to consider as the model moving forward. And I didn't find that one. So Travis asked me to essentially put together a rough draft. And as I started putting together a rough draft, it dawned on me that it would take me about 10 or 15 minutes more to create an actual real draft than a rough draft. So that's what you have before you. This is not my recommendation of what the village should do. This is my best run at what I think the Village of Wind Point wants in terms of a short-term rental ordinance. As Mr. Gasparo pointed out in his text, and again, I'm not sure you can see that, but he had some questions and comments, and since he's still on the meeting, I'll let him elaborate. But this would be, let's say 80, maybe close to 90% of what I think would work in your community. It's just a matter of you looking at it and saying, oh, but we'd also like to do this, or we really don't want to do that. I do want to stress that the guts of the off-site impact aspect of this ordinance would be the zoning ordinance. So we don't recreate the zoning ordinance and stick it in here. We just say, hey, you got to comply with the zoning ordinance. Because it's that site plan review process in chapter 36 that is, in my opinion, robust enough to handle at least anything I can foresee as being a common or a predictable negative impact associated with, Airbnb and Vrbo. They've been around long enough now that I don't think anybody's going to be shocked by some of the worst things that can happen. I mean, you might be shocked, but it's not going to be a surprise when you say, yeah, people can be out in the backyard drinking until 3 a.m. This one says, no, you can't. But the real purpose of this ordinance is it's the license, because once a license is issued, it can be revoked. It can't be revoked arbitrarily, but it has to be revoked for cause. This just sets the terms that allow the village to say, you know something, this is not working the way it's supposed to, and we're going to revoke your license, and you're going to take a break for a year or 18 months or whatever, and then you can revisit it. On that belabored introduction, I'll stop talking for a moment. Oh, there goes Mr. Gasparo.
I guess my question would be, what would you recommend? Because you said this is your draft, but not what you would recommend. So I'm curious what you would recommend instead of this.
Way to put me on the spot, right?
Well, that was gonna be my question.
So I would recommend.
I'd like to almost preempt that and say, you were thinking about what the village would want when you devised this.
Yep.
Can you put that in a nutshell?
But
Didn't you say this is almost like?
Sure, both are actually quite good questions. The second one's going to be easier to address, so I'm going to do that first. This ordinance, to the best of my ability, achieves what I believe the Village of Wind Point wants to achieve from the short-term rental ordinance. But the key is what I believe, not what you believe. So
what do you think we believe in a?
That's the question. I'm not sure I know.
2 or 3 sentences.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I guess what I would say is, Mr. Gasparo, I'll just read the comments he wrote. He said, Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, ? Not in document, ? Very true, because that is covered under state law. And it's anytime any lodging, including a tourist rooming house, which is what a short-term rental's formal name is, they have to comply with all of the state laws and all of the federal laws that apply to any lodging. So doors have to be of a certain width. There have to be clean towels. The sheets have to be, all that stuff is covered. So I tend to not want to replicate in our ordinance what is already established in state or federal law, because they have to do it anyway. And we can pull our license for non-compliance with state and federal law. So it doesn't give us any extra teeth really. And because they have to be inspected by the health department, and there are other conditions that they have to go through to get a license to do this, it's not like if we don't have it, they're not going to know about it. So that would be my comment regarding the ADA requirements. Mr. Sparrow wrote page 5, neighborhood impact requirements. Page 3D needs to define levels. I'm not sure what he meant by that. When he posted these earlier, I was kind of scrolling through. But if I had to guess, I think it would be addressed within the site plan review part of the zoning ordinance. Again, they would have to mitigate offsite impacts, and that mitigation would be visual, screening, fencing, vegetation, arborvitae, landscaping, whatever the case may be. That would be visual. Their lighting would have to be self-contained on the property. It can't spill over. So, they may have lighting because somebody might be checking into the Airbnb at a late hour. And of course, they're going to be unloading their car or whatever the case may be. So that lighting would have to be specific to the site. It couldn't spill over on adjoining properties. It could be auditory, no noise after this hour, or at least no noise above the normal amount of noise generated by a single family dwelling. So for instance, if someone has a dog and the dog gets let out at 8 o'clock at night in the winter to do what a dog has to do, and a squirrel runs by or whatever, there might be a bark, right? So any noise that would be typical of another single family dwelling would not be something that I think the village would want to, punish an Airbnb for. So really that's what the site plan review process does. This ordinance does have language like, site appearance requirements. Aside from a changing mix of guests in their vehicles, there shall be no evident, right? So it can't look like a business. If anybody would walk up to this house, wherever this house is, and we're asked, what does this look like to you? The answer should be, well, it looks like a house. There should be no question that it looks, let me rephrase that. If there's any question that it looks like something other than a house, it would be in violation of the ordinance. To give you an example of the alternative, in the village of Ashwaubenon, which is the part of the village that surrounds Lambeau Field in Green Bay. Lambeau used to be in the village, but it was annexed, so it would be the Green Bay Packers, not the Ashwaubenon Packers. Many of those houses around there are Airbnb'd all season long, right? Even midweek, people will Airbnb it, not even to go to the games, but just to experience being there in the season. A lot of those houses are, let's say, less than tactfully painted to reflect an allegiance to that particular football team. So you see these kind of garish green and yellow houses and fences and signage and all kinds of stuff, right? That would not be allowable under this ordinance right now. If the village adopted this, that would not be allowable. Even if it was celebrating the village of Wind Point, whatever, you wouldn't be able to do that. So when I said the level of, I guess the level of regulation that I believe this community wants, I think it's perhaps higher than what some other communities would want. I was thinking when I wrote this, one of the communities I was thinking about is Cedarburg, and I'm not suggesting that Cedarburg and Wind Point are analogs or cohorts. They're not. They're different. But Cedarburg is rather stringent about design and appearance and that kind of stuff. Rightfully so. Other communities that are very tourist oriented are much less so. So what I tried to do in this draft is look at ordinances from quite a few different places, including Door County, and pick and choose the things that I thought would work best here. So that's the short answer, quote unquote, to the second question. To the first question, what would I do different? I don't know, but that's why I want to have this talk with you tonight. Like, when you look over this tonight, and maybe we don't make a recommendation tonight, maybe this requires another meeting, that's up to you. I suspect you'll look at a section and go, well, could we do this? And that I'd be happy to say, yes, we can, or no, we can't, or we could, but might not want to, or absolutely, let's do, right? So the answer to the first question is that. It's shorter. It's up to you to decide where we might want to go further, sorry. I guess it would be farther in this context. My wife teaches at UW Stevens Point, so if she hears me, use a word wrong, I get scolded.
Good for her.
The life of living with a college professor.
I personally think more information. That especially since these ordinances are relatively new. Is better. As far as, when Carmen asked about ADA and everything. It doesn't state anything in here, and if you are not somebody who thinks about that or come in contact, people don't think about that in their own home. And sometimes when people want to rent their home with an event, they don't think about those things. And all of a sudden, they've got, they go look at the regulations, the ordinances going, oh, well, I better make sure.
Well, if they
And I don't
rent, don't they have
know
to get a license, is
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Right, well, I don't know when the health department comes and checks your home, because I know they do have to have a health department, which I would like that a little bit more prominent about getting the health department license on.
Is there, maybe if there's something in here that refers that you have to get the license from the state or whatever?
Yeah. it's
Right,
there.
I wrote it on here, because that was something I was gonna say, I know they have to get that.
Mhm.
So if they do
So
that,
just to, I believe that if people wanna do things, we should make it, very clear, this is what's required, and we'll help you do it, just like, you wanna put up a house, well, this is the way what you're gonna have to do, these are what you're gonna have to comply with, this is what you need done, here's your checklist. I don't wanna make it hard for people, I wanna make sure they comply. And if you can make it easy for them to comply, then I think everybody's happy. And then if somebody comes back to you and go, well, I didn't know, and I understand ignorance of the law is no excuse. If it's sitting right here in front of you, going, well, it's like the third line in the ordinance on what you need to do and what you need to comply with, there's really no excuse. So I think, somewhere, because it states here, you have to comply with the village code. Well, you also have to comply with state and federal laws, but they may not necessarily know what they are. Maybe a reference point.
So there's a lot there. I'm gonna jump in and correct me or direct me if necessary. If I can preface it by using a little analogy. Zoning ordinances do not tell you how big the vent needs to be for the HVAC and the draft filter on the screen above a grill inside a commercial restaurant, right? But no zoning permit can be granted, no building permit can be granted unless that screen and that vent and that pipe and everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Zoning ordinances don't say there needs to be a fire extinguisher, a sprinkler here and a sprinkler here and a sprinkler here. They don't even mention sprinklers. The reason they don't is that's all covered under another entirely fleshed out set of laws. So that tends to be the way we write ordinances. We don't tend to try to incorporate language that already exists into the ordinance, but we make sure our ordinance references those.
Exactly, and that's where I'm getting at.
Yep.
And that's what I'm asking is to reference that, has to go to ADA, has to follow state statute and that type of thing. At least that they know that they have to follow that, because otherwise.
Your Honor, that was my opening statement. I'm now prepared to argue in my defense. So,
I read a lot of statutes and I see a lot of ordinances and the references, so,
right,
as
so
long as
throughout-
you can follow a trail,
Right, so
the other computer
most-
can follow a trail.
sorry. The most important thing is a license is required. That's the most, forget the ordinance and the language. The most important thing about this ordinance is it requires a license. And that license has compliance requirements from the state of Wisconsin, compliance requirements from Racine County, and compliance requirements from the Village of Wind Point. What my opening statement intended to say is we do not need to tell within our ordinance what the state's requirements are and what the county's requirements are, because in order for them to get the license from us, they have to contact the county, they have to contact the state. And before they get a license from the Village of Wind Point, they need to provide that information to the village saying, we now have a permit from the state of Wisconsin, or whatever the case may be. So with that in mind, on page 1, under authority, you know,
Yes.
this chapter is an act pursuant to the authority granted by the state of Wisconsin statutes. If you go down a little bit, it says exemptions, a hotel, motel, or resort license issued by the state of Wisconsin, that's not involved here. But the big one is statutory compliance, bottom of page 1. Any person who maintains, manages, or operates a short-term rental, blah, 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 sub 8, must obtain from the state a license as a short-term rental as defined in what's right there. That would be at the top of our application form. So if someone says, hey, I'd like to do an Airbnb at my house. And they would call Travis, and Travis would say, or Monica, or Hannah. And one of those three would say, oh yeah, we have an application for it. Here it is. Look it over. If you have any questions, give us a call. And right at the top, it would say, before we can issue this license, you must have a license under WISTAT 97.01 sub 15K to run it. So can't help you a whole lot there, but we do have this little guide sheet, which isn't in the ordinance. This would be something, and I think I sent those to you in the first batch. There's DATCAP put out this, essentially it's so you want to have an Airbnb. It's 2 or 3 pages long. It provides all the key kind of points and links to wherever it needs to go. So throughout this ordinance, on page 1, on page 2, there's references to the state of Wisconsin tourist rental house license, again, which is a requirement. There is a reference to the state of Wisconsin's limits in terms of how many bathrooms are needed, how many bedrooms, how many people can stay at an Airbnb based upon the number of bedrooms, how many people can be in one bedroom. There's references to various statutes like ATCP 72.14. So I think all of that's in there. And I say think because I'm not arrogant enough to say it is all in there. I'm confident it's all in there. What I would want to see in this ordinance is what does the state and the county, what do the state and county not cover that make this a Village of Wind Point ordinance as opposed to a Village of Wherever ordinance or a Town of Wherever ordinance? And that was the focus of the vast majority of these 7 pages, like making this Wind Points ordinance. So President McCall, I'm not sure if that answers your question directly, but the concern that I think is the foundation of your question, I believe is completely addressed in the ordinance by way of saying, you don't get a license from us until you've done this, this, and this. Let me give you another example. We talked about chickens quite a bit in the zoning ordinance. To put chickens in your backyard, before you can get a license or a permit from the village, you have to have a DATCAP license. You have to have the number, that DATCAP keeping of chickens number, and that has to be provided to the village before the village can grant a license. But our ordinance doesn't have any of the requirements of what DATCAP needs to grant that license. We have the requirements that are specific to the Village of Wind Point. How many hens you can have and how big the enclosure has to be and all that kind of stuff. So that's the basis of this particular ordinance. Where could it be stronger or more flexible? Basically when you get in the requirements regarding days of operation and property management, much of this stuff is established in state law, but there's wiggle room in the village. For instance, state law does not say there needs to be somebody within 5 minutes of the Airbnb. So a manager or somebody who can be there if there's a problem. That's something that the village has the authority to say. I didn't write that in here, by the way. I think it's a little bit farther away than that, if I remember correctly. But there has to be some ability for someone who's staying at an Airbnb and the pipes break to say, the pipes broke and somebody has to be here now, not like 2 hours. They need to be here now. That's in here. And the state doesn't include those requirements. At least not to any degree.
5 miles from here, so that's 30 minutes away from here.
But even that's kind of ridiculous because most Airbnb owners don't live in the state, they own it, and they probably wouldn't be able to fix it. Anyway.
But there's
They'd be able
provisions
to
in
call
here.
somebody
For a
come
manager,
fix it.
there's provisions in here that,
They have to be
either the owner
Have
or
a
the
man-
manager, somebody who's managing.
Right, there would have to be a property manager and you'll see all over in here, I shouldn't say that, that sounds arrogant, sorry. You'll see in here that there are requirements to have like maps and notes and sheets and stuff in various places. Readily available, readily accessible, so that if a problem arises, someone doesn't have to seek or search or find, it's right there. Most Airbnbs, at least the operators who do it well, will actually have that as part of the lease agreement. It'll say, here's everything you need to know. If there's a problem, call Mary, she'll be there, she'll get back to you within, et cetera. It's that kind of thing.
A lot of them have a folder.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There it is on the counter when you walk in. It's
yeah,
all
so you
there.
don't have to look at it if you don't want to, but if you need it, it's there.
All telephone numbers, everything.
Okay, that makes sense.
I have a question. With all this, does it have any place in there where there is like a separation of high value properties in certain areas, like Greenpoint here versus downtown Racine, and I don't mean it in a demeaning way in terms of these rentals, short-term rentals.
These would
Or
all,
are they
these would all.
This is just for
This is
Greenpoint,
all
Right.
for Greenpoint.
only one point.
Okay, so if it's for Greenpoint, I thought this applies to most of the states, most of the cities too.
No.
This is
These
just,
ordinances are just for Greenpoint.
some of the samples are from different cities.
That's what I was reading.
Yeah,
Oh, this is
yeah,
just-
so different cities
is
and they
a
manage it
reference.
differently.
Okay.
And especially like Lake Geneva may handle them
Right.
very differently because they are a very, very heavy tourist destination.
Right.
So they're gonna
We
probably
don't
handle it
have, like,
differently than Caledonia,
So
So-
in here, in ours, it says some way kind of protects the property value.
Well,
So
pretty much, yeah, this
That's
is
what
what
the
we're
point
going
is.
through.
It really,
Have you had the opportunity to read through it?
yes, I have
Yeah,
read it.
I mean,
but
'cause
some
it's-
of the
it's-
things that
it's- Our zoning, you have to be in compliance with our zoning ordinance,
Yes.
which is to protect our properties. But it can't look like an Airbnb, can't look like a hotel. And if you have problems, and, we can determine how many times, if there's an issue with the property, we can determine how many times the police are called, that we can pull your license and you can't do this anymore. I mean, this is there to protect, it protects us, but it protects, the village, the residents, but it also protects the people renting, because there's minimum requirements that for when they rent, so that they're, and then it's also the number of days a year, because like for somebody who might rent their house out for 6 months a year, that falls under different ordinances.
Yeah.
Between 10 and 180 days.
Right,
I read about that in there.
yeah,
I was just
which
trying
is the
to-
short term.
I was just trying to make sure what I'm reading makes sense in terms of property.
Right, yeah, and
This
and
is all new to
honestly,
me.
if we have any, they're doing it under the radar.
Thank you.
Which means it's okay. I mean,
Well, it doesn't mean it's okay, but we don't know that they're there.
Which is the way we want it.
exactly.
But I would like their tax dollars.
But if they are doing it, we should
Well,
not
we-
notice
we
that they're doing it.
paying the
That's
tax.
basically what it comes down to.
I'm just in
Right.
saving the tax.
If somebody is, when somebody decides to do this, the rest of the community should not notice that they're doing it. is
Right,
basically
you're
what this
absolutely
is
right.
saying.
Mhm.
I mean, it could be.
I mean,
like-
we have plenty of people that go south through the winter and they could be renting their place out, not that most people want, most people are renting down there, not coming
Right,
up here.
Yeah, but they could
All
be
those
ready.
Floridians that don't like the hot weather in the winter and wanna come up here and visit snow.
But thank
I,
you.
I probably should have directed you to page 4 and 5 under the section XX12 property site operational requirements. So this is where, of the entire ordinance, this is the stuff that is the most discretionary, but also the part that I felt most I guess, best meets what I think WinPoint would want. So for instance, parking requirements, there needs, I shouldn't say obviously, I believe we need to ensure that parking occurs in a driveway or in a garage, not on the street. There's no
We're not
parking.
allowed to park on the street.
Right, but they don't know that sometimes, right? I know there's a city or a village requirement that says you can't, but the Airbnb host needs to make sure that the occupant, the renter, leaser knows there is no parking in the street. If it's parking, if there is, that vehicle's gone. So again, these would be things that would be included within the rental guide, this guide for, this kind of trifold or whatever it ends up being that we would prepare so that Airbnb Vrbo short-term rental hosts can provide. There's time,
Okay.
for no outdoor storage related short-term rental use permitted except for typical residential recreational equipment, feeding and outdoor cooking facilities, right? So again, it's just an example of there can't be anything that makes it look substantively different than what a common single-family dwelling would look like.
This is actually the only place where I thought you could see, because there's got to be a sign saying parking here. And you wouldn't do that in your driveway.
It doesn't say that, does it?
It does say designated.
Right, but the
Parking space.
designated parking would be on the agreement, not actually.
Okay.
No,
Not on the
not
sign.
the
Okay,
sign.
got
It's
it.
just like the,
So,
Sure.
The way
the
Meadows
agreement would
say.
say guest parking will be in the garage or no more than 2 vehicles in front of the, that kind of.
Right, okay.
The neighborhood impact requirements at the top of page 5. So no outdoor activity shall occur between the hours of 10 o'clock and 7 o'clock a.m. And that is exactly what it means. You can walk out of the house and get in your car and drive away between those hours, but you cannot be outside doing anything.
See, that's
You
not
can't go out
fair
and take a walk.
either.
Well,
Because
We have the ability to change that.
That's right.
No, I'm just saying, that normal people do go outside of their house between those hours.
Right,
Right,
so
but they're
if you're
doing-
having a barbecue,
But no loud noises or something like that, maybe
that's
could be
different.
a different way of terming that instead of no outdoor.
Now, I underlined that because I think that people take walks in the morning. Nice to get
That's
out.
fine. So
Yeah.
just to be clear, what outdoor activity means is actually an activity, not just being outside, not
Oh.
taking your dog for a walk, not sitting in the backyard looking up at beautiful stars. That's all perfectly acceptable. An activity would be music, games, bonfires, drinking, anything, right?
Wow.
Okay,
And then the one below it really gets to the, at all times, no noise, lighting, odor, other impacts, etc. So basically, if you're standing at the property line on your side of the property line from the Airbnb, there should be nothing that makes you feel like anything other than another neighbor and another single family dwelling is right there.
Is there a definition of activity do we have like a page of definitions in this?
There are definitions. I'm not sure if a definition of activity is in there, but we can certainly put something
Yeah.
together.
Because when I read that, I feel like you're not allowed to go out and look for night crawlers. Get in trouble.
Well, again, I would point out that I think what we do naturally is we think about what we as homeowners or renters do in our yard. That's not what we're talking about. These are people who are renting this house for a long weekend to participate in the lighthouse climb or whatever. No one is going to call the police on somebody who's walking out in the backyard looking up at the stars. But the moment it crosses over into an activity, not something that's just happening, but
I mean, the big band, the rock and roll band, and the
if there's a mosh pit going on in the backyard with early 1980s punk rock music, that would probably meet the definition of activity. On the other hand, if there's a group of people in the backyard talking quietly, no one's going to complain. But if they're talking loud and it's 11 o'clock, they shouldn't be talking loud after 10 o'clock. In the same way, I mean, I can look out my yard right now, and if there was somebody out there at 10:30 tonight having a party, on a school night with an 11-year-old daughter, I would be outside having a talk with them. It just ensures what? Common sense. Everybody should understand. But it doesn't imply that you can't be outside. That's different. Being outside is not an activity.
My only fear is at first read, it sounds more constrictive.
Sure.
Yeah, well, but you do have to remember, it's not residents, it's the people that are coming into our community who don't live here, who are, you know, renting this for the weekend.
And they're
And
not invested in the community.
they're not, and to be perfectly honest with you, when people don't own it and they don't have a vested interest, they treat it like crap and they treat the area like crap. And they don't care because they're not coming back. I mean, that's the truth. So,
Unless you're us.
but this is how it is with Airbnbs.
No,
So-
what she's saying
Right.
is, if, when we go to Airbnbs, we do
We don't
not
act
act like that.
Right.
I do not act like that.
I don't act like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, the
But
vast
there-
majority of
but-
short-term rentals or renters are perfectly fine. No one can,
Right.
but
But
You
you're
know,
about
There's
the
always a
ones
5 or 10% that
Right.
we're good for everyone.
where it's supposed to be, you know, two couples and then they invited all their friends, you know, and that's where the problems come. I keep hearing the horror stories out in Windlake. Let me tell you, they got some
Windlake is,
totally different. And I don't think that, you know, we should be having those problems here, but I just keep hearing those horror stories and I'm like, you guys need some strict ordinances, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the problems will not be with the renters. The problems will be with the hosts. That's who you're going to deal with, because it's the host's responsibility to ensure that that short-term rental is operated the way it's supposed to. And if it's not, that's when the revocation occurs. No longer able to do that. So I wrote this a while ago and I didn't review it in detail tonight, but it has basically the one warning requirement. You know, we warn you, and then next time, maybe it's not a warning, maybe it's revocation. If it's revocation, then maybe you don't get back for a while. So as long as they're aware of that from the get-go, and certainly made aware of that upon the first or the second incident, then it's on them. You know, it's their responsibility. That's their single-family dwelling, their property, and they're allowing someone else to use it. They need to ensure that it's being used in a way consistent with not just the ordinance, which is one thing, but the values and the culture of the community. So when you live in a neighborhood next to Lambeau Field, the culture is different. Everybody knows you're there for a reason. So
There's a lot of activity there.
exactly.
So I have a question. Let's say this is finalized and everybody's happy and approved. It's not going to be final. It is sort of like a floating working document. It can be amended at any time, given the fact that we picked up a few things that the renters are doing or whatever, and we don't like,
we can amend, can't we?
right?
I believe we can.
Yeah, you probably
Yeah.
amend it in 5 years, we find out people are abusing their things or.
Exactly.
But right now, we don't
Let's-
have any, and we're hoping, no, we don't.
I was waiting for a spot and I think I'm jumping in too soon, sorry. Let's talk about the process. So this is a draft. It's nothing more than a draft, and it's up to you as a plan commission to decide whether it stays as a draft for further discussion or whether it's moving on to scheduling a public hearing or whatever. That's up to you. By law in the state of Wisconsin, it's gonna sound weird. Let me rephrase that. In Wisconsin, a law can only be written by a licensed attorney, and an ordinance is a law. I'm not a licensed attorney. So before this ordinance can take legal effect, just like the zoning ordinance went to Attorney Larson, this would go to Attorney Larson. And he'll look it over and he'll say, oh, nice, Jeff, but boy, did you blow it. Fix this, 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 and this. Or, you know, maybe add this there. So it does have to go to Attorney Larson. He and his colleagues will review it, and then it'll come back. At that point, it's up to the village board to decide, again, following a public hearing, whether to adopt it or not. Once adopted, same basic procedures as we went through with chapter 36 and as we're going to go through with chapter 37. There's adoption ordinance. It's just an ordinance that says we have hereby adopted ordinance number, whatever this number would be, 52 or whatever, short-term rental ordinance. And then there would be a publication notice, published in the papers that this ordinance is adopted. The moment that happens, it's legal, full. If a week later, a day later, a month later, we realize, oh boy, we don't want to do that, or we want to do more, you just do the same thing we're doing right now. We amend it. We have another public hearing. That one doesn't have to go before the village attorney, by the way. And that's adopted. So the short answer to your question is yes, it can be amended at any time for any reason. You just have to go through the same procedures you went through when you originally adopted it.
My proposal is we would have a separate meeting just to just go through this together.
I agree, and
And then, I mean, it looks generally okay to me, but it would be nice to just go through like we did from the other plan.
And my goal was
Just this.
really okay.
Try to do it within, an hour or something, as opposed to, like, today we had so much stuff on the list that I didn't get into detail on all.
no, and plus he's got like 5 examples of different ordinances that different cities and towns have done. It'd be well worth reading them to see if you see anything in there that.
Did we get those? Cause it
Yes,
wasn't in this
yeah,
packet.
yeah. That's why I.
That was in a different
It's in,
email?
it's in this packet.
It's in this packet?
It's
Is
in the bottom.
Yeah, you
that, is that what that is
I
down
had
here?
to print my own. It didn't come in a packet.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
if I
all-
could make a request or a recommendation, it would be that, first of all, each of you go through this ordinance and highlight it and look at those other ordinances and see if there's something that you like that I did not include in the draft.
Can we send this out? Is there only 8 pages to this? And that includes all those other ones?
No, it's a 92-page packet. It's in the reminder
Yeah.
email that he sent last week. It's in that packet.
Right, but this part of it is only the 8 pages
Yeah.
at the end?
Seven pages with the title
It's just
page.
draft.
The wind
It's all
point is
right.
7 pages, but then there are several after it, under and after it.
But I guess mine, I'm not seeing what the stuff.
7 pages.
They all follow the wind point ordinance, all these little, I separated them all. But these are all from different communities.
The wind point also says draft across the top of it, and the ones following it don't.
I'm not seeing the pages.
Once you get past the draft.
So
There are some.
on page 52 of the application packet, that's where the first other ordinance starts. I don't remember what municipality this one was from. City of
Marquette.
Modena,
Marquette was the first one.
60. Lake Geneva begins on page 65. Right, so if you scroll through the chapter 29 short-term rentals for City of Oconomowoc begins on page 7. But I guess what I would ask of you prior to the Plan Commission meeting, if any questions that you have, any recommendations you have, if you could email those,
Different view. If mine's,
be better able to discuss
I've
them.
not seen all that. I don't know what I do. That was the other. Some history minor. City of Lake Geneva, okay. Who's that?
It was on,
You probably notice when you get to the town of Rome, which is beginning on page. Let's see, where is that? Page 74 of the packet, chapter 234, and then the town of Holland, which follows it. Those, I took a lot out of those two, but the town of Rome was kind of the skeleton that I built this around. Rome's another one of my clients, and I thought there were some similarities there, but I liked what they did. It's not expansive enough to address what WindPoint wants. But anyways, again, I would
This
ask
is all their system.
Yeah, you can have that.
if you have any questions or any recommendations, please get them to, if you can, get them to me before the next plan commission meeting. That way I can just be better prepared to discuss them.
Should we have Attorney Larson review this too, then and discuss anything?
I
internally?
wouldn't do that yet, because he costs a little bit more than I do. I think when it gets to the point where you as a plan commission are comfortable and you say, this is the one we want to go forward with, that's when I would send it to him. Because if you go to it now and then you decide, oh, you want to add some stuff, then it would have to go back to him. So I would say when you as a plan commission get to the point where you're ready to make the recommendation and schedule the public hearing, that's when it would go to Attorney Larson. Bunch of noisy neighbors outside my window right now. Hey,
But it's not after 10 o'clock.
it's right. Plenty of time to be noisy yet.
They're outside tonight. It's so warm.
Yeah, I mean, it was warm today. I'm not sure what it is right now. When this meeting's over, I'm gonna be out in a hot tub that's right there outside my
Oh.
window.
Yes.
46 degrees right now.
Ooh.
45 years.
Got north.
Outside today.
Okay. So does everybody know what their homework is?
Go through it, yeah, go through it again, pick up what's anything of interest. And send it in advance.
And do we have any referrals?
You need to table this.
Okay. So then we shall, do I have to move to table it?
Should we pick a date, next date?
I'll ask Jeff when he's available and then I'll email again. So
Okay.
Okay. So, I move to table the discussion on short-term rental ordinance until to the next plan commission meeting.
I was just gonna, forgive me for jumping in. Is the plan commission familiar with the legal differences between tabling and postponing?
No?
If you table something, it must be addressed at the plan commission meeting. No exceptions, period.
Let's postpone it.
If you postpone it, you don't have to set a specific date. If you table it, it has to be decided at the next plan. You cannot table something that's been tabled. So if you table it, it's the next meeting and it's done. If you
Okay,
postpone
we
it,
will postpone this till the next meeting. We postpone the short-term rental ordinance discussion to the next plan commission meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Bailey?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain, and we don't have Carmen.
Yeah, what happened?
yeah,
Okay. So motion passes, the discussion will be postponed till the next plan commission meeting, and Travis will get with Jeff and we'll come up with
Yours
when that
shows up
happens.
better. than mine. Is it, are you in PDF or?
Yeah, I
It's just a
downloaded it. I downloaded it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Didn't have to worry.
That works pretty
very
well.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did
We will see you next
two,
time.
actually.
Yes, ma'am. Everybody have a good night. Enjoy the weather while it lasts.
Go
You
enjoy
too.
the weather.
Don't let those rabble rousers outside bother you.
Oh, they'll be quiet by the time I get out. They'll probably scare them away.
So,
Good night, everybody.
no
Good
referrals,
night.
right, Travis?
that you just have to email Jeff any changes before the plan commission, he said. So not during the plan commission next meeting.
Your homework. I want to email Carmen. Of course, it sounds like I have some stuff.
Well, you'll send out another copy of this, right?
Yeah,
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn?
Second.
Jim and Jim?
Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Meeting is adjourned at 7:08.